Mm,
Can you
yeah,
see the page?
yeah. Yes, we are live now.
Okay.
I think a tiny lag.
Yeah, it's 8 already. So we'll just begin.
Yeah.
So, hi everyone. Welcome to this live session. I'm so excited to welcome Ms. Shreya Agarwal, who is a STEM educator and the founder of Caterpillar. She does some amazing STEM workshops for kids. So it's such an honor to have her in this space to share with us her knowledge and experience on what STEM is and why it is important for our children. So if you're just joining in, just drop us a hi. If you have any questions, just post it in the comments below, so we'll take it up as we go. So Shreya, let's just begin with talking about what is STEM, because we hear about STEM a lot these days, but not many know what it truly means. So tell us what STEM is.
Firstly, thank you, Grace, for such a lovely and heartfelt welcome. So, like you mentioned, STEM, there's a lot of buzz around STEM these days. The acronym has suddenly gained momentum for, let's say, past 2 years specifically. The acronym basically stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. But what it really does, it's much more beyond the acronym. It is an interdisciplinary approach towards these separate fields of study. So, what used to happen when we were studying and we were exploring these subjects as a student, most of these subjects were taught in isolation. There was not a clear integration. So now the learning method has evolved wherein all these four disciplines are integrated. So what a child learns, picks up is how they're cohesive in approach rather than treating them as different subjects or in bucketing them into different molds. So it's a really fun way to look at things and very hands-on, very practical. Because if you pick up anything around the house, it would be very hard for you to, let's say, a simple example of a clock. You cannot really bucket it into either science or technology or something which does math. So it's a combination of a science concepts, then technology to make it, and engineering where your needles are working, and then finally it depicts a mathematical concept of time. So that's what exactly STEM is all about. It's an interdisciplinary approach.
Good, great. Now, tell us, how it can change the way our children learn. You know,
Yes. So that's a very interesting question, Grace. I'm so thankful you asked because what happens when we start teaching children. Uh, I remember as an engineering student, there were not many concepts which I learned, but I never knew how to put them up in applications because we lacked application. The method of our learning is uh, it's not related to the practical life experiences. So you acquire knowledge, but when it comes to the application of knowledge, there's no learning. Actually, you're just educating yourself. So the entire premise of getting education is to learn, but when you do not know how to apply it in the real world, the entire purpose gets defeated. So that's why STEM steps in. It teaches children why a certain concept is there, why it is necessary, and how it is actually relevant to their real lives. And also in STEM, the major paradigm shift which comes with STEM is it is not teacher centric. It is not a rote way of learning. So instead of teacher being the guide and the leader of the learning process, it gives power to the child. So the child or children, as if I can say, they lead the learning process in this case. They are the ones who's driving the learning in the classroom rather than the teacher who's saying, okay, today we are going to learn this, and she jots down on the board and goes about it. So here children are actually, they're empowered. They can ask questions, they can make cross linkages, and it is them who gets to decide the flow of the class. So that is very empowering. We are giving power to the right stakeholders rather than resting power in the teacher.
true, true, makes sense, because how we learn
Yes.
at school and what we do in real life is entirely different. There's this huge gap between these two, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we
Yes.
learned that the rainbow has seven colors, but how many children know why a rainbow has seven colors, or
Why?
why it appears in the sky every time it rains, right?
Right,
Many
right,
know that.
right. Exactly.
Okay.
So, like I said, there's a, over time there has been a gap between education and learning. So now we are trying to, bring these two close together, that education equals learning. In the past, over these years, education has not been really equivalent to learning. So that's the real gap STEM is trying to bridge here.
Okay. And also tell us about how it can encourage, creative thinking or problem solving, because at school, children are taught facts and figures, right? But how many children are encouraged to ask questions or use their imagination to create something new or problem solve for that matter? So just tell us how STEM can really encourage children in all these important areas.
I think as the first step towards encouraging STEM in children is, as a parent, you should let them ask questions. Don't, I know there are a lot of jokes around the thing that children ask some 2,000 whys in a day, but they're really good. And they need to ask those whys. So instead of just giving them a ready-made answer and telling them, okay, stop asking me questions, or I don't know, probably a good idea is to jot them down. And if you don't have time, and tell them, okay, I don't know the answer, I'll search it for you and I'll come back to you later. Another way to encourage creativity is like, we were discussing this earlier as well, not to force children to color within the lines. Let them use their imagination.
True.
What happens when they, especially with the young children, when they start holding the pencil, the crayons, we are so obsessed, especially in the recent past because of the Pinterest crafts. We want all those fancy crafts, the
Yeah.
perfect picture crafts. So children are, we all can have a look at the picture or a craft, and by, we can be certain whether they were made by the child or the mother pitched in. So let them be creative, let them explore their dimensions. If they want to color the sun purple, let it be. So encourage them to think. That's one thing. Don't give them, ready-made answers. When I say, like, uh, let's say there's a question which your child asks, so give them a little answer, a partial answer, and ask them to wonder why do they think it happens. So, giving rather than giving a complete answer and sating the curiosity, encourage them to ask another question based on that. Like you mentioned the case of rainbows. Okay, why do you think rainbows are there? So you can ask, do you see, what do you think? Why is this always raining when there's a rainbow? Do you think there's any correlation? What kind of a weather it is when you see a spot of
Mhm.
rainbow? And let's say the sky appears white, but there are seven colors to the rainbow. Can you make any kind of a connection here? So what do you think if we mix all these colors together? So let them explore and give them questions, prompt their curiosity rather than just giving a straightforward answer. That's one way, and it really, really opens up a child's mind.
Yeah, yeah, true. I see a question here. Param is asking, is it experiments based? Is STEM experiment based?
This is a, STEM is not really experiment. It's hands-on. So everything we do, we are doing it with, linking it with real world application. That's what I would like to put it, because just let's say we are doing a classic STEM experiment of baking soda and vinegar. So, for me to explain it to a 6-year-old or a 4-year-old why this acid and base causes a reaction, it's more tricky. So, I would rather omit that kind of a experiment, wherein, you cannot give complete answers to the question, because the first question a child, a curious mind, is going to ask, why these two things mix and form a bubbles. So STEM is not really experiment based, but it's more hands-on approach. It can include experiments, it can include activities, it can include manipulatives, it can include arts. Like that's why there's a sudden emergence of STEAM as well, which includes arts into the acronym as well. So just thinking it's only experiment based, if the experiment part is lacking, there is no STEM happening, that would be not the right way to think about it.
Okay. So now that you mentioned STEAM, I mean, just tell us the difference between STEM and STEAM. Of course, arts is being added, but like,
How?
which is which is and what would you go for? Like,
I think what would I go for? I think it totally depends on the interest of the child. Because some children, what happens is STEAM basically integrates arts dimension also into STEM fields, and also there's an emergence of STREAM. So, but the R here stands for reading. So, we are building a lot of cohesive approaches. There are a lot of iterations and permutation combinations coming up now. But for children, a lot of children are very creative and they love coloring, they love doing arts. So for them, it's, I think, stream is not stream, STEAM is a better approach. And also, what happens with a lot of children, they like creating something. Maybe, they might not be able to do the experiment entirely or make a model out of something, but giving them a good model to create, a craft to create, helps learning penetrate further. So, because you're again making those neural connections while doing that particular art project, so it just reinforces learning. But again, there's no I would not say that stream is better than STEM. It depends on what kind of a learner your child is. If your child detests coloring or making, art projects, then probably that's not for you. You can just leave the arts part aside.
Okay, I guess I'm getting a question from someone. Just a second, Shreya.
Sure, sure.
Okay. So meanwhile, you can talk about the page. So meanwhile, you can
Yeah, true.
tell us about some simple experiments that
Then STEM, it depends on what kind of a learner your child is. If your child detests coloring or making, art projects, then probably that's not for you. You can just leave the arts part
just a
aside.
second.
Yeah, true.
I'm getting a question. There was an echo. Okay. I'm so sorry. Okay, that was my screen. You tell us something that parents can do at home with their children. Simple STEM experiments and how they can, for someone who has no clue what STEM is, what can they do?
So, you can, STEM, you can integrate in daily walks of your life very easily. So, something like for a young child learning to color, probably somewhere around 2 or 3 years of age when they start recognizing colors. So, you can build on the relationship between colors, primary colors. Give them, probably make a garden, make a grass, make a garden, and you can label. Okay, you have to color this. Green, and you want to color this flower orange. Now, instead of giving them orange and green, give them the primary colors, red, blue, and yellow. Let them mix, let them experiment if they can mix those two colors and find a green color, how it comes up. And similarly, you can go for orange and purple. So these are simple experiments wherein the child is learning through, because there's a joy in self discovery. Ask them to, first they are going to question you. Oh, I don't have orange. How do you expect me to, color the flower orange? I don't have. So just give them an idea. Okay, why don't you try mixing two colors?
Mhm.
You might get orange. So there's a sense of discovery, self discovery, which greatly aids the learning process. In fact, according to science, it's suggested that the best kind of a learning happens when you just nudge the child beyond the knowledge gap, a
Yeah.
step beyond the existent knowledge. So
Mm.
now the children here, in this case, they know their colors, but they still don't know how primary colors mix to form out the color. So you're challenging them just beyond their comfort level, one level beyond, something which they can easily do. So
Mm.
that's one example. And another thing, which especially I can think of in this scenario, is regarding the COVID pandemic, which has been going on. So recently, me and my son, we were having a discussion because the children keep hearing the news that you have to quarantine for 15 days. So now for you can explain that simple quarantine concept. Why 15 days? So what we did was a simple experiment where we took and we had taken an apple. I cut it into half. So one part of the apple I rubbed all around the surroundings, on the table, on the floor, and to infect it with germs, just to show
Mhm.
that you're rubbing it on the floor and on the table. And then you just keep both the halves in two different Ziploc bags. Just date them and let them sit in a dark, cool spot. You will notice for almost 4 5 days, there's almost no change in both the apples. Both are aging, similarly. So
Mhm.
there's no difference. And all of a sudden, by the time you reach 10th day, suddenly the apple which had been rubbed across the floor will show you rotting signs, while the other apple is pretty much, it's just wrinkling, it's just it's not rotting away. So that's one way you can link what is happening around you, because a lot of children are asking questions around the pandemic, and parents don't really know how to take it forward with them. So you can link those activities, what they're learning from their environment, and through an activity, that okay, the germs which were already there on the apple, we were not able to see them for at least 10 days. We could not, but suddenly when it's day 12 or day 13th, you suddenly see the apple is, it started developing a fungi. So that's how these viruses also attack us. So that's one way.
That's a really interesting example. We can
Thank
try
you.
to talk to.
Yeah, and another one, like children of this age, they're very particular about hygiene. We are trying to, as parents, we're trying to inculcate good hygiene
Yeah.
habits in them.
Mhm.
So I think many of us do face, when we start with brushing our teeth, our children's teeth, they don't want to brush. Especially they don't like the flavor of the toothpaste or
Right.
So that is the time, I think it's been since my son is 7, it's been quite some time. But we did this simple experiment. I took an egg. We took two eggs actually. So cover one egg with the toothpaste and let it sit overnight.
Mm.
Next day, wash the toothpaste off, and then what you do is you submerge both the eggs. Of course, you label the beakers. You submerge both the eggs in vinegar. So you will notice, Grace, it is such a simple experiment. After a day, the egg which had toothpaste on it still
Mm.
has a little shell, soft shell remaining on it, while the other one, the shell dissolves because it's calcium.
Mm,
It's
mm, mm.
like so
Okay.
these are simple examples where you can relate to your teeth. Okay, this is how the toothpaste actually protects your tooth, because every day you eat something which is going to decay the enamel of your tooth. And if you protect your teeth with using a toothpaste, that's how simple things like these, they really have impact on children.
Yeah.
And also it is helpful for parents in the sense it reduces the amount of fight they have to put up with their child to make them follow some basic hygiene
Mm.
principles. Yeah,
True. I
yeah,
guess these are simple things that children need to know, and they learn
yeah,
it very easily through everyday experience, like rather
yeah.
than from learning those things from textbooks, once they start.
Right.
Yeah.
Rather from books, or constant nagging, why I need to brush, because it's going to keep your teeth clean. So if you just give them a simple example, they really understand it. And trust me, the struggle reduces tremendously, which is it's like a win-win situation for the parent as well as the child. So simple experiments like these. Also, you can work around shapes. Children are very curious because they're learning shapes. I'm talking about the early learners here.
Mm.
So you can question them. Why are the wheels round? Let's put square wheels
Mm.
to a toy car. Just make a toy car out of a old plastic bottle. Put square wheels. Try putting circular wheels, and then
Mm.
try all different kinds of shapes and let them come out with their answer. Why it is a circular while the wheels are always circular? So there is a science behind it. There is a reason why we don't have square wheels or triangular wheels. So things like that really aid the developmental process, the thinking, critical reasoning, and logical thinking of your child. Then when you're sitting on your dining table, probably you can prompt up with a question: what do you think if it had one leg instead of four legs? Where should it be placed? Or why four legs? Simple things like this. And you
Yeah.
can probably do a construction. You can build a simple model with Legos or the normal blocks which you have. So let the child experiment with the physics and the engineering part there. And you can build coin structures. You take out pennies and make penny spinners. Like, I think I have this one handy to show. So we made out different pennies. We cut out cardboards in different shapes. There's a circle, there's a rectangle, and then there's a pentagon. So
Mm.
what we basically do is a slit in the right in the middle, and then we put a penny in. So now what we did, our exploration was which shape would spin the most. So, and why is that? And for younger children, you can also, instead of a penny, you can, again, like I mentioned, you can put something like, well, a square, and see why
Mm.
a square doesn't spin. So these are simple, very simple STEM activities which you can do at home without much hassle. I think that you can get these ready within 10 minutes, because right now expecting parents to have too much time, or
Yeah.
even on a daily basis, it's difficult to sit with a child for more than 20 minutes. Their attention spans are very small. So try to do some simple experiments like this. Then right now there's a lot of emphasis on coding in STEM. So if
Mm.
a child is, of that age, probably you can do a muffin encoding, wherein you can put two figurines at different ends of the muffin and ask them to, link arrows which direction they should go. And another thing you can build up is with conditional statements like if then else. So it's a very fun game with if then else. So all you need to do is make probably a simple, I've done them here from my last workshop. So we have these simple color coded post-its, sticky notes. So what I've done here is, on the blue notes I have the if statement, and on the green ones I have then, and the pink ones are else. So the child picks up, there are three slots. We give three slots. So they just pick up if statement. If the if statement, like I've picked up one, so it says if you're wearing red. So if the child is wearing red, then they go to the then statement, which is the green one, else they go to the pink statement. So
Mm.
now they are, through a means of a game, a simple game, they are learning how a conditional statement in programming works. And once, they've
Wow.
grasped that, children who are, already coding, or they're doing Scratch, it becomes very easy for them how to grasp this conditional statement, which
Yeah.
is, I think, after you grasp conditional statements, programming becomes quite easy. It's the
True.
tricky part. Yeah. So STEM activities like these, you can do at home. And another very interesting activity which you can, probably do with your mobile phone is, make a circle around your terrace or anywhere you feel, mark a position, and click the picture of night sky every night, especially the moon, if you can manage the full moon. And over the time you will get all those pictures of the entire moon cycle, and then make it into a flip book. So
Wow.
yeah, so that's a very interesting project where, the child gets to see all the pictures, all the phases of the moon. So these kind of things actually encourage children to observe and think. And further, then that builds on the curiosity. They can ask you questions, then probably delve into the further science, why the science, the science of moon phases. But independently, if you just do moon phases, okay, let's do moon phases. This is waxing, this is waning, this is
Mm.
good. It becomes kind of monotonous and boring. I don't think so many children would, really sit on
Yeah.
that kind of
They
picture.
won't be able to retain that piece of information longer, or
Exactly.
don't understand what it means. But
Right.
if it's like a fun based, or if it's like hands on, or if they do something,
Right.
as what you just mentioned,
Right.
turn it into a flip book. I guess they
Right.
would retain it much longer and understand it really
Yes, and
easily.
another thing I really feel, as a parent and as an educator, we should not, because with young children, or with even older children till they are probably in higher grades, we should not lay much emphasis on the lingo, because the scientific lingo is little, it's difficult to remember. If your child remembers, great, brownie points for that. But don't stress, because I have seen parents stressing over, okay, my child recognizes the phases of the moon, but he does not remember whether it's waxing gibbon or waning gibbon. So let's not take the joy away from learning by, focusing on the nomenclature here. So
Mm.
make learning fun, as much fun. Let them call it whatever they want. As long as they understand it, they'll grow up and remember the names anyways. So just keep learning joyous. I think that's the biggest takeaway here.
I completely agree with you. I have a question here. Param's asking, how can we give more emphasis on STEM education? I guess,
Y-
yeah.
Uh, yeah. So STEM STEM education, I think the first thing as a parent you can do is not to force your child into rote learning,
Mm,
not to ask them to cram things. Whatever they're doing at school, it's okay. And I think as a parent, I really feel children learn a lot at school. They don't need to come back and sit over with you, because especially with the younger children, I'm not talking about the higher grades. So younger children, they do not need to practice so much that they get handwriting books, and you give them, let's say, 10 questions a day. Okay, you have to solve them, otherwise you make them sit for half an hour. Encourage curiosity rather than just focusing on the rote learning. Ask them questions, make them observe, go for a walk. If you see something, point it out in a manner, like if there's a moon, let's say, or you can spot Venus in the sky, so you can just wonder and say, wow, I see a very bright shining object in the sky. What do you think? It's a planet or a star? And then probably delve it further. What is the difference between how you can make out with the naked eye, which is a planet, and what's a star? So
mm.
give them freedom and space to question and inculcate curiosity. Let them be creative. Do not put them into boxes. Even in STEM, I would say don't put them into boxes that, since I want you to do STEM, you must be very good with Legos or you must do coding. Let them explore. So as long as your child is curious, it may be in arts, but there is always an integration, Grace. There's always an integration. It's never that there's no integration. So all we need to is look.
Okay, I have another question.
Hmm.
Can you tell me the current developments in STEM?
As in, I've this question in terms of, if we are talking in terms of children and the future job prospects, current developments in STEM are very promising. What we are expecting is that uh, there would be 10 times more job increases in STEM. That's the data according to the US research, because in India it's still in the nascent stages. Also in STEM, there's a lot of emphasis in early STEM education. Current emphasis is a lot on the early STEM education, and there's a lot of money being put in countries like China, Russia, Switzerland, and US. So sadly, India is not, doing as much as it should be doing right now, but we are all moving in the positive directions. Another development in STEM is in terms of AI. So a lot of people are working on integrating AI, and especially with the current scenario where we are all stuck at home. So that's one very interesting development. A lot of STEM courses are available online if we are talking about that. So that's pretty much it, because the question is very wide in itself.
Yeah. Okay. I guess Suganti, I guess she answered your question. If you have any question, you can leave us a comment so she can take it up. Um, Okay, so I have a question. So, as I already asked, if a parent has no clue what STEM is, right? And for someone who knows it, they know what to do, what kind of activities or what kind of questions to ask the child to stimulate curiosity. So, for someone who has no clue, where can they begin? Where can they start?
I think they really need to follow the child here, because children are themselves very curious. So don't suppress their curiosity. If they ask you why, give them the answer. That's the first foremost step towards STEM. And I'm sure once you ask, because with children, what happens? Their answers, their curiosity does not end at the step one. So you're going to answer them, and then they're going to question you more. So
Mm,
keep answering their questions, keep that curiosity alive. And once you've got that, once your child knows that his questions or her questions are going to be answered, they're going to come up with 10 million questions more. So that's one point which is very tiring, as well as it is, but this is the foremost step in encouraging STEM at home. And then once you are on the track, you can, probably encourage observation by pointing out to something which your child might be missing, like when you're going into the going on a swing. So you can talk about push and pull,
mm,
because the child is on the swing, there's a push and pull motion, both kinds of motion there. So that's how you basically start with STEM. Let them imagine, let them be, and be a listener rather than, be an answer giver or somebody who knows who's an answer at all. Be very frank and be very open that your mom or your father or your even as a educator, I'm very open with during my workshops that I don't know answer to all of your questions. But what I'll try is, it has happened with me, somebody has asked me a question which I didn't know answer to. So you have to be very open that we don't know answer to everything. But what we can do is we can come back with answers. We can find it out. So encourage in that research. If your child is old enough, ask them to sit next to you, open up your laptop, do a research, let them see you researching. How do you Google things rather than just saying, okay, let me Google it and come back to you. So
Mm,
let them be part of the process, make them a part of the process, let them tinker, let them open things around, give them an old cardboard box and tell them what can you make out of it. If you had to make something, give them imagination prompts that if you had to change the world or probably if you had to build something, what would you do? Because children
mhm.
these we might think that children are young, but they have lots of ideas. They
Yeah.
are buzzing with ideas, and it would be surprising to know once you once you get them talking, it's you're in for a rude shock that okay, this guy knows so much.
Yeah.
You do not comprehend the kind of knowledge they have. So that's one thing I really wish parents to take forward with all their children. And again, I'm coming on the point again, not to focus on the rote learning,
Yeah.
not to stress them out too much that your writing needs to be perfect, your spellings need to be perfect, you cannot make mistakes. These mistakes will crease out over time. So as long as they're, listening, they're observing, and they're asking questions, they're good.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. I have another question. Could you please help us with any virtual classes on STEM?
Virtual classes, I am not following any virtual classes to be very honest. Um, but let me go through them. There are, I think, a lot of classes, online classes, which are being done by various platforms. I think you can go on various websites like there's NASA org, where
Mhm.
you can find some resources. But on a particular online STEM classes, I am not very aware what's happening in the space. I'm sorry for that.
Okay. We'll get back to him later.
Yeah.
But okay, so you, I mean, like, okay, let's tell us about your STEM journals, Shreya. I use them, and they're really really cool. For someone, especially parents who have no clue. I mean, those are really well organized and structured. So just tell us about your STEM journals.
The Grace, the idea of the STEM journal, how it came into existence was because when I was doing STEM workshops, uh, travel is a major issue here. Traveling from one part of the city to another part. So I was facing trouble in traveling through different parts of the city, and I was getting calls regarding it that when are the workshops happening here. So that's when the idea stuck to me that parents are, because if you treat literature in isolation or experiments in isolation, they do not give you a complete sense of learning. You cannot integrate the subject. So that's when I came up with the idea that why not we collaborate, collate a resource wherein the parents get to have the literature of exactly what otherwise a child can ask, and then supplement that knowledge with a relevant experiment and
Mm.
a craft. And further, at the end, we have added a few worksheets for the child to, for a parent basically to see if the children have retained or what they have retained. So they can, repeat. And of course, repetitions matter a lot with children. So that's the idea. The entire premise of a journal is to integrate literature, the scientific literature, with the experiments and make it relevant. Because otherwise, if I'm doing some experiment without any literature, it's more like a magic show happening for the kids. Like I said, for the volcano experiments, it's purely magic for them. It's like oohs and ahs, but not really learning. No real learning is really happening there. So once you integrate literature with experiments, the child is able to correlate. Okay, this is what I've studied, and this is how it happens. So that's bridging the gap, and then you're able to relate it and retain it better.
Okay. So, as she just, told us about her STEM journals, if you wanted to check her journals. They're really amazing. You can, go to her website, kidpillar.com, KIDPILLAR, and check her journals out. And anything else you want to share, Shreya, on STEM?
I really
We
want
pretty much
to.
covered, everything. Shared us some amazing experiments that we can do at home with kids.
So
Anything else you want to add?
all I want to say is parents is you just to keep your kids curious. I know I sound repetitive here, but keep your kids curious and don't box them within the STEM field is also okay. That if you don't do coding, if you don't do Legos, you are really at a lag. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine with with the kind of developments which we are making. We are in the fourth industrial revolution, and divergent thinking is what's going to take them forward. So just inculcate that, build, let them make connections, and they're going to just lead the way. Just follow your child's lead when it comes to learning.
Yeah, true. I completely agree with you. So I guess we'll just wind up, or if you have any questions, you can just post them in the comments. We'll wait for a couple more minutes to see if anyone has questions. Meanwhile, you can share with us your journey with your son. How did it all start?
I think it all started because of him. I was working before till my delivery. So after he was born, I could not manage the hours, and like they say, an empty mind is a devil's mind. So I was just at home, and that's when because he was a curious child, I followed my child's lead. So I'm very proud to say that Kid Pillar is because of my son. So he was a very curious child, and what I observed that the curriculum, the play schools, he was the Montessori's they were going to, they were not addressing all the curiosity. So I just stepped in, and I was in for a good shock that with kids, straight answers do not work. So
Sure.
for every answer I gave him, there was another question, and I realized that really kids are really like Einstein says, or Albert Einstein once quoted that if you can't explain it to a child, you have not understood it well.
Sure.
That's when I really understood the meaning of that quote. And I realized that, for him, if I have to answer his questions, I really have to be prepared. That's, so gradually he was propelling me in that direction. And luckily for us, some of my friends and his Montessori teachers, his friends, they realized that there's something, probably special or not really special. I would not say it's special, that he's more curious, he's a little more knowledgeable, because I was probably aiding him in the right direction. So they started asking me, the parents started asking me if I'm doing something special with him at home, or if I'm enrolling him to certain classes. So that's how Kid Pillar was born, just out of curiosity, my son's curiosity, and then the parents coming forward to question me further.
Great. Interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll wind up, Shreya. Thank you so much for your time and for the valuable
Pleasure, Grace. It's been such a pleasure to be with
you
you.
shared with all of us. And thanks everyone for joining us. If
Thank
you
you.
are interested to know more about Shreya and the work she does with children, and also her STEM journals, you can check it out on our website, kidpillar.com. You can visit her Facebook page. Kid Pillar, I'll leave a link to her website and her Facebook page in the description. So thanks again, guys, for joining. We'll see
Thank
you
you
soon.
so much, everyone, for joining and listening to us.
Take care and stay safe.
Stay safe, everyone. Thank you. Pleasure, Grace.
Thank you. I enjoyed our conversation today. So thank you for your
Pleasure
time.
talking. Thank you so much. All right.